January 22nd, 1879. News of an impossible defeat hits the British Empire like a shockwave. A modern colonial army, armed with state-of-the-art rifles and artillery, has been wiped out by warriors carrying spears and shields made of cowhide. Over 1,300 professional soldiers were cut down in a stunning display of tactical genius. The news sends a tremor through the heart of the empire, in London. How could this possibly happen? How could a supposedly primitive force deliver one of the most humiliating defeats in British history? To understand this, we have to go back to the founder of the Zulu kingdom, a man whose brutal genius forged a war machine that would outlive him by 50 years. A man named Shaka Zulu. If you're ready to learn about one of history's most brilliant and controversial commanders, hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. Long before he was a king, Shaka was an outcast. Born around 1787, he was the illegitimate son of a minor Zulu chief, Senzanga Kona, and a princess named Nandi. Because their union broke clan customs, the stigma haunted Shaka's childhood. He and his mother were exiled, forced to wander between villages, enduring constant hardship and humiliation. But what happens when you push a child with a royal bloodline too far? Nandi eventually found a home with the powerful Mthethwa clan, but for young Shaka, the psychological damage was already done. The bitterness of his youth forged in him a ruthless ambition and an unbreakable will to power. It was with the Mthethwa that Shaka's destiny began to change. As a young man, he was conscripted into the army of the Mthethwa chief, Dingiswayo. But Shaka wasn't just another warrior, he was a prodigy. Dingiswayo was a reformer, already tinkering with traditional warfare, but Shaka saw the world differently. He questioned everything. Why throw away your only spear when you could hold onto it and kill again and again? Why fight in disorganized mobs when you could move as one disciplined, deadly unit? His physical courage was legendary, and his mind was a storm of new tactical ideas. Dingiswayo, impressed by the young man's ferocity and strategic thinking, became his mentor. Under Dingiswayo's wing, Shaka quickly rose through the ranks, earning a reputation for both brilliance and brutality. When Shaka's father died in 1816, the moment he had been waiting for arrived. With the military backing of his powerful mentor, Shaka returned to the Zulu clan. He moved swiftly, assassinating his half-brother who had claimed the throne and seizing power for himself. At the time, the Zulu were a small, insignificant clan of maybe 1,500 people, but under Shaka's command, they were about to become the most feared military force in southern Africa. The outcast was home, and he was ready to build an empire. What do you think is a more powerful motivator, ambition or revenge? Let us know in the comments below. Shaka didn't just reform the army, he tore it down and rebuilt it from the ground up. His most iconic innovation was a weapon. The Ikalwa traditional warfare in the region had been dominated by the long, flimsy throwing spear called the assegai. Warriors would hurl their spears from a distance in battles that often had few casualties. Shaka thought this was inefficient, even cowardly. He armed his men with a short, broad-bladed stabbing spear with a thick shaft. He called it the Ikalwa, named for the sickening, sucking sound it made when pulled from a human body. This wasn't just a new weapon, it was a whole new philosophy of war. By getting rid of the throwing spear, Shaka forced his warriors into brutal face-to-face combat. There was no more skirmishing from a safe distance. Now, battle was a bloody, hand-to-hand struggle to the death. To go with the Ikalwa, he introduced a larger, stronger cowhide shield that could be used to hook an enemy's shield away, exposing their chest for the fatal thrust. But new weapons are one thing. How do you convince thousands of men to abandon their traditions for such a brutal new form of combat? Shaka's real genius was in organization. He created a permanent professional army, organized into regiments called amabutho, grouped by age. Warriors were taken from their homes and forbidden to marry until they had proven their worth in battle. They lived a life of relentless, brutal discipline. Shaka even forced his soldiers to discard their sandals and march barefoot over thorny ground, toughening their feet to make them faster and more mobile. A Zulu army could march 20 miles in a single day and still be ready to fight. This disciplined force was then drilled in Shaka's tactical masterpiece, the buffalo horns formation, or impondo zankomo. The design was devastatingly simple and lethally effective. The army was split into 3 main parts. The chest, made up of the most experienced warriors, would hit the enemy head-on, pinning them in place. As the enemy was stuck fighting for their lives, 2 horns of younger, faster warriors would sweep out to the left and right, running to completely encircle the opposing force. A 4th group, the loins, was held in reserve, seated with their backs to the fight to keep them fresh and calm. The reserve could be sent to exploit a weakness, support a failing flank, or deliver the final crushing blow. Once the horns closed in, the trap was sprung. There was no escape. The surrounded enemy was compressed, overwhelmed, and then utterly destroyed. This was total war, a concept largely unknown to the region before Shaka. His new army wasn't just for defense, it was a relentless engine of conquest. If you're finding this breakdown of military genius fascinating, hit that like button to let us know you're enjoying the video. With his new army, Shaka unleashed a wave of conquest so violent it became known as the Mfecane, or the Crushing. Beginning around 1818, he set out to either absorb or annihilate every tribe in his path. His first major test came against the powerful Ndwandwe, led by his old rival, Zwide. At the Battle of Cockley Hill, Shaka's much smaller army used superior tactics and discipline to crush a larger force, cementing his reputation as a military genius. What followed was a decade of brutal expansion. One by one, chiefdoms were given a simple choice: submit and become part of the growing Zulu nation, or be exterminated. For those who resisted, the results were horrific. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, and entire populations were wiped out. This wasn't just conquest, it was the remaking of southern Africa. But was Shaka the only cause? It's a key question historians still grapple with. While Shaka was the primary engine of the Mfecane, it was a complex disaster, with widespread drought and other regional conflicts adding to the chaos. The violence cascaded across the land. Tribes fleeing Shaka's armies would crash into other groups, creating a domino effect of war, famine, and migration that stretched for hundreds of miles. This era of devastation also had an unintended consequence. As generals fled Shaka's wrath, they took his military methods with them, forging new, consolidated kingdoms far from his reach. By the late 1820s, Shaka's kingdom was the most dominant power in the region. He controlled a vast territory and commanded a battle-hardened army of up to 50,000 warriors. He had transformed scattered clans into a centralized, powerful Zulu nation with a fierce, unified identity. But his empire was built on terror. His rule was absolute and tyrannical. After his mother Nandi died in 1827, his grief reportedly spiraled into madness. Accounts tell of a year-long reign of terror where no crops could be planted, no milk could be consumed, and any woman found pregnant was executed along with her husband. Thousands were said to have been killed simply for not showing enough grief. This erratic brutality turned many against him. Shaka's war machine had built an empire, but his own cruelty was tearing it apart from within. Was this grief-fueled madness, or the calculated paranoia of a tyrant? Tell us what you think in the comment section. Shaka's endless wars and brutal reign created enemies, even inside his own family. On September 22, 1828, with his main army away on a campaign, Shaka was assassinated by his half-brothers Dingaan and Mlangana. It said his last words were a prophecy, warning them that not they, but white people who will come up from the sea, would one day rule the land. Dingaan seized the throne, inheriting the formidable military system that Shaka had created. For the next 50 years, the Zulu kingdom remained the dominant power in the region, a major obstacle to the ambitions of encroaching European colonists. By the 1870s, those ambitions belonged to the British Empire. The British High Commissioner, Sir Henry Bartle Frere, saw the independent Zulu kingdom as a threat to his plan for a British-controlled federation in South Africa, using a series of border disputes as his excuse. Frere issued an impossible ultimatum to the Zulu king, Cetshwayo, in December 1878. He demanded the entire Zulu army be disbanded in 30 days. It was a demand Cetshwayo could never accept, which is exactly what the British wanted. In January 1879, a powerful British force, commanded by Lord Chelmsford, invaded Zululand. They were confident, even arrogant, armed with modern weapons and backed by the might of the world's greatest empire. This should have been an easy victory, right? On January 22nd, Chelmsford made a fatal error. He split his forces, taking a large part of his army to hunt for the main Zulu force, leaving about 1,800 men to guard their camp at the base of a mountain called Isandlwana. He thought the camp was secure. He was disastrously wrong. A Zulu army of 20,000 warriors, moving with the speed and stealth Shaka had demanded, descended on the unsuspecting camp. They employed the classic buffalo horns formation, a core tactic from Shaka's playbook. The Zulu chest slammed into the British front, while the horns moved silently and swiftly to encircle the camp, cutting off all escape. The British fighting line was too spread out, and their ammunition supply lines broke down under pressure. The rifle volleys faltered, and the Zulu warriors surged forward, overwhelming the soldiers in a storm of close-quarters combat with their Ikalwa spears. The result was a slaughter. The military system, built on the foundations Shaka had laid half a century earlier, had been unleashed on the British Empire, and it had bled them dry. The Battle of Isandlwana was a terrifying testament to Shaka's enduring, brilliant, and bloody legacy. We're about to get to our final verdict on Shaka, so if you've made it this far, help us out with a quick like on the video. The British would eventually recover and win the Anglo-Zulu War through sheer firepower, but the victory at Isandlwana sent a message that echoed around the world. It proved that an African army, using its own unique tactics, could challenge and decisively defeat a modern European power. Shaka Zulu himself remains a deeply complex figure. He was a nation builder and a tyrant, a military genius and a mass murderer. He was responsible for immense suffering, but he also forged a powerful kingdom and a legacy of resistance that would inspire for generations. The war machine he built was a product of his brutal genius, a force that not only conquered his rivals, but, decades after his death, handed the mighty British Empire one of its most crushing defeats in history. So what should we make of Shaka? Was he a visionary hero or a brutal tyrant? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you want to learn more about the titans of history, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.